Convicted killer David Sweat was on the run for 23 days. He's finally back in police custody and in critical condition at a hospital in Albany. He was shot twice in the back after trying to run away from a lone state trooper.
All this happened just 2 days after his partner in crime, Richard Matt, was shot and killed by the police. The standoff took place near the small town of Constable, New York. It's about 5 miles from the Canadian border and almost 40 miles away from the prison where they both escaped.
The nightmare may finally be over, but many questions still remain. Earlier, we spoke to our Anna Werner, who was at the scene where Sweat was apprehended.
So, Vlad and Elaine, here's what you have to understand is behind this bush here, there's a road. Cars going by right now. The trooper was coming down this road and evidently saw a man jogging, stopped to question him, and realized it was David Sweat. He said to Sweat, "Come here." Instead of coming to him, David Sweat took off across this field running. The trooper gave chase, and when he realized that Sweat wasn't going to stop, he shot him twice in the torso. Back in that back corner of the field is where he was shot. We have read reports this morning that say that the trooper is a firearms instructor. So if anybody can hit him at that distance, I don't know where the trooper was exactly. Imagine the trooper somewhere in the middle of this field. David Sweat's in the corner. That's where he gets nailed. So this was, kind of a one trooper and David Sweat at the end of all this manhunt with 1,300 law enforcement officers. It's one guy and the convict, and he shoots him.
That's incredible. And Anna, how close did David Sweat get to the Canadian border?
Well, Elaine, very, very close. So we were talking to some residents last night who were actually here visiting a friend at a house nearby when all of this happened. And they used to live here. They know the area well. They used to own a farm right nearby here. And they were explaining to us that if you get to those trees, which are about some 200 yards from me right now, then you've got about a mile of wooded terrain, and then you're in Canada. So literally, if he had made it to the trees, into the trees, which would have made him much harder to track or, get a line of sight to shoot, he probably would have made it to Canada. He was a mile and a half from the border. He almost made it.
Yeah, and I can't wait to when this guy finally talks, if he ever will. But it's interesting that he was on his way to Canada today, more than 2.5 weeks after the escape, when, most people suspected that they were on their way to Canada way earlier.
Well, they were on foot, right? And they had to figure out how to stay hidden on foot, which I think is why they used those hunting cabins. They found supplies. If you need food and water and clothing and you don't want to go into town where people will see you, where do you go? It'd be interesting to learn whether they kind of knew about that area and had thought of that area as an alternate option, or maybe they'd been up there hunting, earlier in their lives somehow. Who knows? We'll find out, hopefully, if David Sweat ever talks. But it's interesting to note that this field, this area right close to the border, is a good 15 miles from where Richard Matt was shot on Friday afternoon. So if you think about it, in about a 48-hour time span, literally from Friday afternoon to Sunday afternoon, David Sweat made it like 15 miles. And this, for a guy who's been on the run for 3 weeks, we don't know whether he's had much to eat, but if you can imagine doing that, and the weather's been cold. The change in the weather may have hurt him. He might have been making more mistakes. Maybe that's why he was out like on a road where people could see him.
And I also wanted to ask you that prison worker Gene Palmer asked him about his court appearance today. He's facing some charges. What are those charges?
Well, the charges that Gene Palmer faces, you'll remember there's this other prison employee, Joyce Mitchell, who they say was in on the escape plan. Gene Palmer's charges are related more to his activities with the prisoners while he was working as a corrections guard. And both the district attorney and investigators say they do not believe that Gene Palmer was aware of the escape plan, that he became kind of an unwitting accomplice in that, Joyce Mitchell took some of those tools she was giving the inmates, the hacksaws and things like that. She put them in a pound of hamburger meat, froze it, and then put it in the refrigerator or the freezer. Gene Palmer is the one who allegedly, according to his sworn statement to investigators, took that pound of frozen meat and gave it to Richard Matt in his cell, who was actually locked up in his cell at the time. But Gene Palmer, in his statement, says that he was unaware that the things he was doing provided assistance in any escape plan. What he said is that he was giving them certain items like paintbrushes. Remember that Matt was a painter. Paintbrushes, things that they wanted, these kinds of items, and sort of special favors, so that they would give him Number one, they gave him artwork. He got artworks that evidently he had in his possession and later tried to burn after they escaped or buried them. And number two, that he was trying to get information. He said they were trading, sort of horse trading. He'd give them something like paint. They'd give him information on bad things that were going to go down in the prison. So his charges are different from hers, but similar in terms of the actual criminal charges. Providing prison contraband is one of those, and could carry prison time for both these employees.
Anna Werner, tremendous reporting, Anna. Thank you so much.